Hey guys, welcome to Indie Talk 101. I'm so glad that you're tuned into this interview and I appreciate all of your support thus far. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you all the 6'9", 275-pound, thick and sexy skyscraper. You know him as the urban playboy who keeps it player. From Hempstead, New York, he is your 2024 NWA Exodus Midwest champion. He is too cool, too fly, too hard, but most importantly, too smooth. Mr. Fresh to Death. Ladies and gentlemen, wrestling fans, and single ladies all around the world, please help me welcome to the show the pretty boy Smooth.
That's that's crazy.
that was that was look. You told me like I don't really have an intro. I said cool. I'll get you one. Don't worry about that.
That was definitely an intro.
thank
Uh,
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Of course. So first, I want to ask, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. I really have no complaints right now. I'm just enjoying life and just trying to stay in the present moment and keep things rolling.
The present moment. I love that, and that's so real. So, we're going to get right into it, and we're going to start with the question that everybody asks you when you come on, and that is, how did you first get into wrestling?
All right. So I grew up a fan pretty much like everyone else, but I only knew about WWE because that's all you would see on television. It was WWF at the time. So I was supposed to play basketball overseas, but then I ended up going back to school. So like I'm in grad school. I, for one reason or another, have decided not to play basketball anymore. I'm going through certain things and I'm trying to figure it out. But a girl that worked with me, she knew I was a fan of wrestling. So what ends up happening is one of her best friends is dating John McChesney at the time, who is a local wrestler out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and they're like, "Hey, like we're going to this independent show. Do you want to go?" And I didn't know anything about it, but I saw Matt Hardy was on the flyer, so I'm just like, "Cool, I'll go." And pretty much, I go there. I see John McChesney and Matt Hardy wrestle in front of like 150 people, and I was just enamored with it. I got to hang out with John a few times. And then one of my friends ended up coming with me because I started going to the shows monthly. At the time, it was Pro Wrestling Rampage. I don't think it's around anymore. But anyway, I would go every month. And the girl I was with was like, "Hey, like, you love this. You're in shape. You're still an athlete. You could probably do this. Like, why don't you, like, try and see what happens?" And at the time, I'm like 23, 24. I'm like, I don't know. But I reach out to John one night when I'm drunk and I'm like, "Hey, like, what do you think about me learning how to be a referee?" And he was just like, "Absolutely not. You're huge. Like, if you're going to do this, you might as well wrestle." So right when I finished grad school, I started training, and that was 2015. And then I had my first match in 2016. So
Wow, that's incredible. And that's a story. And I just wanted to ask, like, coming from watching WWE and then getting into the wrestling world yourself, especially in independent wrestling. I know as an announcer, there are like logistics and politics and things like that that I did not know comes along with this. So, what has been like the biggest shock from being a fan of wrestling to being a wrestler and just maybe like what you didn't know actually goes on behind the scenes?
um, I knew it took work. I'll say that. Like I never had the ideology of, oh, this is fake or whatever, because like you have to physically go out there and do things. Like we don't have stuntmen. And you learn very quickly when you're in a weapons match that a chair is a chair and a light tube's a light tube. You know what I mean? So I adjusted fairly quickly to the athletic component of it just because I'm a very physical man in general. But just learning how to emotionally connect with the crowd was very challenging. Learning about like production on like a larger scale, like the camera guys, whoever's doing the music, or how much like I did extra work for WWE once, and I found out that it cost like $250,000 just to put on one episode of Monday Night Raw. So it's just like learning the business from different scales was really impactful for me, and just realizing how many things you're juggling aside from just being the talent. Like a lot of guys that get into wrestling, they focus on like the end ring, which is fine, but you forget that your aesthetic and look and presentation is important. You forget that you need to have microphone skills. And in today's age, you have to know how to market. You have to be a content creator. So it's like figuring out that aspect of it on top of like the wrestling was like the biggest challenge for me. But now I'm enjoying it because those are the same things that I enjoyed about wrestling growing up. Like I couldn't tell you what my favorite match is ever. But I could tell you one of my favorite episodes was watching Stone Cold Steve Austin lay booby traps on DX. You know, like those are the moments that you create that people remember. So just figuring that out, I would say, is pretty challenging. And as far as like politics or whatever, it's the entertainment industry, you know. So I've noticed just from documentaries and just from being around different people and different things, like the same issues we have in wrestling are the same they have in hip hop and movies and all that kind of stuff. It just so happens that when somebody's winning at a high level, a lot of those problems get overshadowed. So it's just a matter of knowing how to play chess and work your way in those shark infested waters, I'd say.
No, that's facts. I love your take on that. And so now I gave you this big introduction. So clearly we all know that you're large in stature, okay? Probably one of the tallest wrestlers I've ever seen in person. So has your height at any time made it difficult in the ring or like even when you started training, when you first got into wrestling, after getting your master's?
Well, absolutely. It's very difficult for a multitude of reasons. I'll try to narrow it down a little bit. Um, the first issue you run into is like there's not a lot of wrestling trainers that know how to train giants because a lot of them aren't giants. You know, like I'm not like I can learn how to do the fundamentals and things like that and like in training, but I'm not trying to learn how to do like crazy pinfall submissions and like things that Lee Moriarty would do. Or I'm not trying to do like, you know, moonsaults and shit. Like there are some guys that do that. But for me, and what works for me is playing to my strengths because nobody can do what I can do because I am naturally gifted with that size and that strength that I work on and stuff. So just learning how to use it effectively in the ring and tell a story, it's very hard to do. Like I said, when you don't have the right trainers that know how to teach that. And then also from a booking standpoint, a lot of promoters don't necessarily know how to book big men or book giants to be attractions because to them on the indie level, a big man is somebody that's 5'10" and 270 pounds. You know what I mean? If you put that on television, they'll just look like a very thick dwarf next to, you know, an actual giant. So like when people don't know how to book you, it kind of creates less opportunities and things like that. So for me, it was just more of just keeping my head down, keep showing up, keep being professional, and make sure that I check all the boxes outside of just the in-ring stuff so that people can find ways to get me on their show and use me. You know, like the Playboy persona is partly who I am, but it's also partly an opportunity for somebody to say, "Hey, I wonder what would happen if I put this person in this storyline," or things like that. Like when you got to look at your character and things from like a booking standpoint. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, like overall, just being a giant is it comes with pros, but it definitely comes with cons, and you have to be able to ride the storm of that.
I appreciate that response. And like even speaking of bookings, I realize that independent crowds can be very hard to move from doing announcing at shows and being a fan of shows versus going to a WWE show or AEW show. So how has it been like what has been the hardest part of trying to keep the crowd engaged and actually seem like they're interested in what's going on in the ring?
Well, it's knowing your crowd and it's believing in what you do. So for me, what's helped me is when I was coming up, which was 9 years ago, it sounds crazy. But when I was coming up, like we didn't have the internet at the same level that it is now. Like nowadays, people will work the same area and not really travel much, but because they have the internet, they think, oh, everyone can just see me on here if I go viral or whatever the case may be. That's a detriment to becoming a good professional wrestler because what people in the East Coast respond to is not the same as what the people in the West Coast respond to, or the Midwest, or the South. So for me, I was just always in the car. I was always on the road. I remember my first car had a Chrysler 300, and I ran that thing to the ground. I put 178,000 miles on it. And I was going from Erie, Pennsylvania to Ohio to Indiana to Tennessee to North Carolina to St. Louis, just working a lot of different crowds, training with different people, and having those different experiences so that you know how to react based on where you are in what region, but also you can test things out, trial and error, and see what works for a majority of the crowds you work with and what doesn't. You know, a lot of people don't take the time to figure that out. And that was very instrumental in helping me. And the other thing I was saying about belief is like, you've met people that are confident in their everyday life and their self or whatever, and you can feel the energy vibrate to you and things like that. So somebody that's being authentic to themselves and believes in what they're doing, it's going to naturally transfer to that audience.
And speaking of like just commuting and following your dreams and like, standing on who you are, how do you get to a point of when you're younger and you're chasing your dream of wrestling, like to, where you are now? Because a lot of people, have to kind of quit the dream because it doesn't sustain them. They have a family, they have, this going on. So how do you just continue to keep the momentum chasing your dreams while working in independent wrestling, while commuting and living a life of traveling, while you're primarily carrying the load?
Yeah. So, two things I'll say right off the bat is I'm very stubborn and petty. And I also had parents that are from the South in the 50s. So, because of that, I was raised on work ethic. Like my dad has worked 3 to 4 jobs my entire life. And that's really what got me into wrestling because Monday nights when he would get home at like 10 o'clock, all we could watch together before I went to bed was Monday Night Raw because it was still on. So the thing is, like when you come from a background of perseverance and grit and resilience and working hard, like it just becomes second nature. And like the end goal of what you want has to outweigh what it takes you to get there. And I feel like we live in a world today of instant gratification, like I was wrestling for 9 years before I got the contract with the NWA. And in those 9 years, I've seen people come and quit after a few months or after 3 years because they didn't get booked where they wanted to go. I've seen people let the internet talk them into a dark place. I've seen it all. And at the end of the day, like you have to be mentally strong enough to just keep pushing, like I've invested so much into this that I felt like if I were to stop swimming at this point, it would just be for nothing. If you keep swimming, eventually you're going to hit shore, so like, that's kind of how I've always looked at it.
No, that's awesome. And I want to say, like, growing up watching WWE, like, when I started just now getting into interviewing, I didn't really know, like, how everything went into the independence. And so, typically I always thought, like, that was the climax. Like, that WWE, that's where you made it. And then I started to see, like, no, there are people who leave and go back to independence and they're actually better off. And, like, just having their own boundaries and standards. So, with everything that you just said, like, what does making it look like to you? What does success look like to you? You talked about just the years of wrestling before you got to NWA. Like, did that make you feel like it was worth it? Did you feel like, okay, now I made it? Are you kind of monotone the same? Like, what is your definition of success in wrestling, but also within yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my definition for success in wrestling and my definition of success in itself, for me, they kind of correlate, right? Like, I believe success is a journey and you're always moving the goalposts, like I always felt like, and I don't know, I'm not trying to sound like toxic masculinity or whatever. But like as a man, like if I don't have purpose, if I don't feel like I'm going for something, I feel like I'm just wasting my time here. So I'm not a person that believes that you've like made it in any regard. I think like you set goals, you reach those goals, and then you find something else. Like it's like if somebody to retire from their job, like what are you gonna do? Just sit at home and watch television all day? Like you're drifting. I don't believe in drift. So like one of my first goals was to eventually get like a contract and stuff. And now that I have that, and now that I'm making good money, like it just allows me more resources to reach my next goal, which is to become a star at the NWA. And then when I become a star there, then I'll find something else to reach for. Like I want to get into more movies and acting and things like that. So like I'm just a very ambitious person, and part of that is just the New York hustler in me. and then just seeing like my dad again working 4 to 5 jobs all my life. So that's just kind of how I take it.
I love that. And I want to bring up your upbringing. So you talk about your dad a lot, and I know that you are from Hempstead, New York. So can you tell us like what part of New York that is, like where that's closer, and kind of like how life was growing up for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hempstead, New York. Hempstead's in Long Island, but it's not like the ritzy part of Long Island that people think it is. I'm actually 15 minutes from Queens. And I really grew up a decent amount of time in New York City because when I played basketball, I played on travel teams that would practice in the city and play teams from like the Bronx and everywhere, and then we would travel out of state. So my upbringing was really just a lot of sports. Just I did martial arts first, and then I did basketball, and I did a lot of traveling, and pretty much like it was the way that my parents kept me busy and out of trouble. When I was growing up in Hempstead, it was a fairly rough neighborhood. My public elementary school was right next to the projects. I've seen like drug deals and crackheads and prostitutes like just around the area. You know what I mean? So when I got to middle school and high school, my parents were able to get me into a private school, which was nice. And then I was able to get like a sponsor to help pay for the Catholic high school I ended up going to. Which fun fact, I went to school with descendants of the Gotti family because it was in Oyster Bay, and that's like where they live. But yeah, like my upbringing was like a lot of sports. Sometimes with friends when I could, but I was used to just being on my own just because I was always gone. And when I would get home from playing sports, they were already out partying and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd say basketball took up a big chunk of that. Um, when I had time to be with my friends, I would be with them. But I was fairly introverted, if that makes sense. And then I always had like a lot of female friends with me because women just felt comfortable around me. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't like a creep or nothing like that. I was kind of like the big brother because I was always huge. I was 2 feet when I was born. I was 6'5" when I was 12. So it was just it's always been that. But yeah, like my whole life really has revolved around athletics to a capacity.
So was there ever a time when you were younger that you thought about being a wrestler, or really was like when you were in college?
So when I was young, I would have these dreams. I know this sounds very like corny, but it's the truth. Like I'd have dreams of one day I'm doing martial arts, or one day I'm in a movie, or one day I'm like the president. Like different things like that. And it never really made sense to me. And I played basketball because I was tall and it felt like I was supposed to do that. So like I looked at that as this means to an end to get me college scholarships and things like that. But when I started actually training for professional wrestling, it felt like the true calling because it encompasses everything that I would dream about. Like there's times where you're going to have a microphone in your hand, and like there are times you're doing physical combat sports and stuff like that. And I would never get involved with politics or be a president, but I do philanthropy work and I have a scholarship now. So it just feels like wrestling is what brought me to where I was supposed to be, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I love that. That's awesome how you even put it and how it kind of manifested into its own way in wrestling. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super cool. So, I want to talk more about you. So, we talked about getting crowd engagement, and if you know, the theme song is everything. I mean, as soon as I hear "You Think You Know Me," like if I see Edge coming out, it's a problem. Okay, okay. The theme songs, the DX theme song, like all that, like are you ready? So tell me about like what made you pick the theme song that you have. So I know you had Call the Corner, and then you had Keep It Player. So why did you transition, and what do you like about Keep It Player?
So yeah, it was just a lot of growth, a lot of trial and error. I always wanted to have my own themes because I'm very big on professionalism, and I feel like even at the indie level, if you carry yourself like a star, it's gonna resonate with the fans. So at the time when I was doing like the Call the Coroner gimmick and stuff, like that song, like it fit what I was doing, and that was really my friends messing around on GarageBand, and then like I paid some guy in the UK to make some mixes of it. But the latest song I have now is my favorite, and I would say, first off, the Urban Playboy came into fruition after COVID. Um, I was kind of resetting everything and trying to figure out what I wanted to do that would be authentic to me because I've had other characters in mind or gimmicks and whatnot, but it was always what somebody else said. It wasn't coming from me. It wasn't being authentic to who I was. So like the Urban Playboy fits me. And one of my good friends, Vonnie, he actually made like that latest song for me. And the whole concept was we need to spoon feed this catchphrase to what I'm trying to present. So yeah.
I love that. And talk about presenting. So you are swagged out. Okay. Like when I first saw you, I was like, okay, like he's swagged out. And everybody has different ideas for their gear and like, you know, what they want to wear. So what inspired you in your look for inside the ring?
Um, I would say I'm inspired by like 90s, 80s hip hop culture fashion, if that makes sense. You know, like you have to have like the professional wrestling tights and stuff like that. But I went through a lot of different things. Like I remember there's a time I was heavy on like watching stuff from Black Mafia family and stuff. So I'd wear like a black turtleneck with like a gold chain, things like that. I've done different types of varsity jackets because that's the kind of stuff that I would see growing up as a kid. Like Dipset used to wear those a lot. Now I have like a velour button down because it really fits like the Playboy vibes and stuff. And some of it is stuff that I would actually wear in like every normal day life. So just going off my own style and stuff, like I feel like it just fits authentically. And sometimes you just have to find ways to jazz it up, whether it's rhinestones or whatever the case may be.
No, and then you also had talked about like so you just mentioned your jacket. So you made a post earlier in the month this month of May about selling your entrance jacket. So what made you like, you know, think of the decision to sell it? Cuz I know like do you typically think of your gear as like memorabilia, like something that just, you know, you want to save and, you know, maybe put in a museum, a Pretty Boy Smooth museum?
Yeah, so I do have certain gear like that. Like the very first pair of tights I made for the Urban Playboy character, I would never sell those because they they hold a dear spot in my life. It has like and my gear maker hated me for these, but I pretty much had her stitch on like designs of chapstick with different area codes in them. So I mean, I'll let that leave that for interpretation. But the ring jacket, it was cool, but because I'm like evolving my look and things like that, it doesn't have the same sentimental value to me. But I know a lot of fans have seen me and have worn it for some big matches and things like that. So I figured I'd like, be willing to part with that.
Okay, so we'll see what lucky fan gets that historic jacket because definitely it's going to be good history. And I also wanted to mention too, like you talked about doing just some work for WWE, and then I was watching a few of your other interviews, and I know that you interviewed with, I mean, I know that you wrestled with a few stars. So I just want to ask, like, who has been like the most I don't want to say the most famous, but like your favorite person that you've wrestled with or you've been able to like work with in the industry.
If I'm being completely honest with you, it's probably Gannon Jones Jr.
Okay.
Like, and I've wrestled a ton of guys from like the Eddie Kingston. I've was tag partners with Swoggle. I've wrestled with Randy Orton's dad. Like I'm all over the board. But Gannon is somebody that I have a lot of chemistry with in the ring, and we're both ultra competitive. So you're bound to get a hard hitting, really good match whenever we're both in the ring together. So I like guys that can kind of like push me and bring out the best in me. Like he's one of those guys. So
That's
definitely Gannon Jones Jr. for sure is one of my favorites to work with. And I'd even say Hayden Backlund, who's a guy that I actually helped bring in the NWA recently that's doing making real good strides there and stuff. So I'm sure I'm missing a few, but off the top of my head, I really enjoy working with them.
okay. So those you enjoy working with them and those are some of your favorite. What does Pretty Boy Smooth's dream match look like? Is that something that has already happened? Is that something like you're looking forward to? What does your dream match look like?
So I'm going to give you a complete, honest answer. Right?
Hmm.
You're not going to like this, but it's the truth.
Uh-oh.
I don't have a dream match, and
Okay.
the reason I don't is because my goal with wrestling is to just become a star and make a lot of money and be the guy that people want to have dream matches with. Like my goal is different. My goal is to like be a top guy. I don't necessarily care about, oh, I've watched this guy since I've grown up. I want to wrestle him. Like I really don't look at it that way. And I've also had experiences in my life that have taught me not to be like a Debbie Downer, but like some heroes you don't necessarily want to meet. And just because you may want to have a match with this person, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good match or you're going to have chemistry or things are going to work. And I mean, I'm open to work with almost everybody, like, and there's a lot of people I do think are dope. And some people's like work, I can just enjoy it from like an outside perspective. You know what I mean? Like, it's like being at a museum. Like, you can look at the paintings, but you don't have to touch every single one of them. So, like for me, like my dream is to just be like a star with this, and maybe have a career that emulates something of like The Rock or Batista. You know what I mean? So, like that's really where my head's at.
That's alpha mentality. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Have you ever had like a crazy match or like maybe a match where something happened that shouldn't have and you're like hurt from it or you wish you would have
Yeah.
done it differently?
Yeah, I can find the clip and send it to you later because I don't want to get up. But I was wrestling at AIW Wrestle Rager, and it was like an outdoor show. And everyone that knows me knows I'm not into hardcore stuff. I'm not into death matches. I appreciate and respect the art, but just for me to compete in those, it's really not my thing. Like for perspective, I wrestled this girl Sawyer Wreck one time, and she pulled out a light tube, and I just tapped the mat and left. Like that's how much I'm not into that. And it's nice that I have a character that's not into that. You know what I mean? Like I want to look good. Why am I gonna do shit like that? But anyway, I don't know why I agreed to this, but I was wrestling at Wrestle Rager and I agreed to take a spot with a light tube. And if you do it properly, like it'll hurt, but it won't kill you. And unfortunately, things didn't go the way we wanted them to. I'll just leave it at that. And I got hit like right where my kidneys are, and I have like two large gashes across my back. And it's like, and that was from one tube. It wasn't from like a multitude of them. And it looked like a lion scratched me. And it sucked. And what really sucked was when I went to take a shower, I thought I had gotten all the glass out, but you can still like feel it. So I was kind of messed up for a few weeks about that. But all respect to the person I was in the ring with, like things happen, you know what I mean? I'm not like holding on to it or whatever. But yeah, like that just reassured me that that just isn't my thing.
Yeah, because that's what a lot of people are like, they have their notions about wrestling, but I'm like, whatever you guys are doing in the ring, it's all real. Like everything,
Yeah.
every chair hit, all that,
If it
yeah.
wasn't, my body would not feel banged up right now.
Okay, exactly. The half line, everything, exactly. So I also wanted to talk about like when you were talking about being with Stars in a Ring recently, how you retired Trevor Murdoch and just how that show got over 250,000 views. So what were your thoughts going into that match and just like seeing the totality of it all?
Yeah, I was I don't know, because like part of me, I'm in shock, but only for like 5 seconds, because then I'm a very stoic person when it comes to things like this, because like that's cool, but you want to build on it, right? As far as the actual match goes, Trevor Murdoch is very physical. He's a very hard hitter, and he's like a legend with what he does. He's a respected veteran. He's won almost every title you can at NWA. He was a WWE Tag Champion. Like he has respect and presence, you know. So like when you get in the ring with a guy like that, you want to earn his respect, you know. Like I was fortunate enough that guys like him and Aaron Stevens and EC3 took me under their wing when I came into NWA, and like you want to keep that going and prove that you're a valuable asset for the future. So I'm just like prepared, ready to go for this match. I had no clue he was going to retire. I found out when everyone else did when he cut that promo in the ring. I had absolutely no clue. Um, I feel honored knowing that like he went out against me, but at the same time, I feel I earned that. You know what I mean? Like, like I'm not a small dude. Like you need the next big presence to be here, and that's kind of what I believe I am. So
Absolutely. Yeah, what an honor. What an honor. So, we're going to bring things to a close, but I wanted to mention you talk about your parents, your closeness with your dad. I just wanted to know, like, what do your parents mean to you, and even chasing your dream? Well, not even just chasing, pursuing this dream of wrestling, and then just your success in it all.
my parents didn't want me to wrestle. If I'm being completely honest. And that goes back to what I was telling you about when I said I'm very stubborn and I'm very petty. Like I've always been the kid that like if I want to do something, I don't give a damn if this person don't like it, that person don't like it. I'm going to do it because that's just who I am. And my mom would tell me like, even as a kid, I would think that way where I'd want to do something and she'd be like, "Well, I'm gonna whoop you," and I would just say, "Well, whoop me then." Like I don't remember that. I can't picture myself saying that, but she said like that's just how I'm wired. So you know what I mean? Like, I will say that they're very supportive, whether they agree with what I do or not. And they ended up getting to come to, because they're still in New York. They ended up flying to Erie maybe like not too long ago, like within the past 2 years, and they got to see me wrestle Myron Reed at Big League Pro. So and like I have a very big reception here. Like I live here now. Like I have a strong fan base here. So she got to see like in real time like what's been developing. And then when NWA had a show in Alabama, my mom flew down there because I have family down there. Like that's where they're originally from. So she got to see me wrestle for a television company and stuff. So it's like they're starting to see the dividends pay off from everything that I've put into it. They're very supportive of me, like I said before. And we don't always see eye to eye, but that's every family, like you all have your issues and whatnot. But I feel like she knows that she raised a very hardworking son. I know my dad is very proud of me. And like, I have one of those fathers that like he'll get on you in private, but he'll praise you in public. So it's finally he's at that age now where he's finally giving me those flowers to my face. You know what I mean? So it's very it's a great feeling. They look at me as a success, and I don't see myself that way, but that's also probably what keeps me going. So we'll just see how things play out. I guess I don't know.
That's awesome. And I wanted to ask too, so we know you as the smooth talker, smooth walker, pretty boy smooth, but what is something that, we don't know about you that you wish we would, or what does it look like for you off the camera?
um, that's a tough one because I'm intentionally very reserved and introverted.
Hmm.
Because like I feel we live in a society now where people overshare to the point that you can't have aura, you can't have mystique. You know what I mean? Like when I'm coming to professional wrestling, this is a job. Just like if you're going to the grocery store or somewhere else, and like you're not going to ask your cashier like unless you want to get with them like certain things. You know what I mean? So like there's certain things I don't touch on,
Hmm.
but I guess the best thing I can say is that like I'm not lost in the sauce to the point that I don't think that I'm a human being. Like I'm not Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? Like I can meet people, have conversations, because a lot of and this is why I'm happy I started wrestling later on in life because people that have grown up in wrestling, they only know how to deal with wrestling fans a certain way, or they only know about like this bubble of the world, and it's like I've traveled the country playing basketball. I've gone to different colleges. I've been around. So it's like I know how to communicate, make people feel safe and comfortable with me and things like that. So just that I'm a regular human, I just work very hard and I believe in myself, but I have my own insecurities, my own issues just like everybody else. And I do want to be the poster child for resiliency and like being able to get something out the mud. And I mean like really out the mud. Like granted, I'm tall, but it's not like I come from a wrestling family, or I had certain connections, or I was getting booked at the best place. You know what I mean? Like I really had to like grind and get this out the gate. And it's still a grind till today, like I have a TV contract and stuff, but some people don't respect NWA. Like that's just the reality of the situation. So it's like I have to find ways to keep showing my value all over the board. So I want to be like somebody that you can look at and go, well, it's possible because this person did that. Like when I transferred from Hofstra University to Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst is Division II. And at first it bummed me out because I'm like, well, if I wanted to play pro, like I don't know if this would help me. But then within 2 seconds of a Google search, I find out that Ben Wallace came from a Division II school. Scottie Pippen didn't come from a D1 school. Like there are people that have played overseas and found their way. So like I'm a person that believes if you really want something, you'll figure it out. Like I hate when people say, "Oh, I wasn't going to the NBA because I was short." Well, Allen Iverson went. Muggsy Bogues went. No, you didn't go because you weren't good enough or you didn't put the work in. So I'm very real about putting in effort to go after what you want. And like I just want to be a person that shows that in my everyday life.
Yeah, and I wanted to compliment you too because even like not knowing you, as long, but just being able to see the integrity and like knowing like you're on NWA, you're on a televised show, but then you're also going to the other independent shows that aren't televised and you're keeping the same stature, you know what I'm saying? And just how you hold yourself. So I just wanted to say like I just wanted to compliment that to you because some people, like you said, can let it get to their head. Maybe all they know is wrestling, but you've been able to have a background where you've been able to live and you know,
Yeah,
understand
you
people.
got to think like I appreciate that, but people forget like God could take shit away just like that. You know what I mean? Like I would never believe I'm untouchable, even if I was a multimillionaire, because we're all 15 seconds away from a different life. So it's like you like I don't like the word humble because I don't believe in having like a low estimate of yourself, but
Yep.
I do believe in being grounded and being able to still learn and grow and being aware of like the people around you and like what gifts and privileges you may have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that will always make you or anybody else who carries that same mentality be a winner, regardless, be successful, regardless. It's up to how you define success, and keeping that humility and always remembering that. So absolutely. Before we end it, I do know that you have a scholarship. So I just wanted to ask you just to share a little bit about your scholarship and how we could donate or help or find figure out more about it.
Sure. So it's called the PB Provides Scholarship. On prettyboysmove.com, there's a direct link to the scholarship. It has the information and how to donate and stuff. And the money goes directly to Mercyhurst. Like I don't touch any of it. It's something that I don't necessarily post about a lot because I don't want it to come off performative, but it is very much a real thing. And what it is it's a $1,000 one-time award to a Black student that's either at Mercyhurst or going to Mercyhurst looking for a degree in communication. And the reason I did that was because while my undergrad is in communication, I feel it's a very underappreciated and undervalued major in college. And like we live in a world where literacy rates have gone down. People don't know how to have effective communication with just their friends or a job interview and like reporting and journaling and all those things. And I also wanted to help diversify the school because anyone that's been to Erie will tell you like it's a very predominantly white area. So the whole concept of me creating that scholarship was to help in those two avenues. And I started it with tax refund money. Like I spoke to the financial aid people and people that run that kind of stuff. And there's so much that people can do if they just want to take action as opposed to just posting some random shit on Facebook of an opinion without any backing to it. And thankfully, from my wrestling platform and things like that, I was able to grow it a little bit. And unfortunately, when George Floyd passed, there were a lot of people that were looking for Black causes to donate to. So I ended up getting like 5 grand like immediately for the scholarship based on that. So I was able to up the award from wherever it was to like $1,000 or whatnot. So we've given it to I believe 6 students now, and it's something that I'm hoping to continue as long as I can.
That is incredible. That's so incredible. So you all know how to donate, how to give, and just seeing everything that he's doing for the community, for young African Americans who are looking to pursue communications, but most importantly, a college degree. So, Pretty Boy Smooth, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for working with me through the technical difficulties, but
It's all
it
good.
was truly an honor to be able to speak with you, and I hope that you all truly do enjoy this episode. So, until the next time, guys.
Peace.
Bye.